Welcome back, Science 9. Today we are going to focus on water quality and concentration, specifically the first part of topic 2.1 of Unit C, which is everything regarding water quality, followed by next booklet will be about the air quality. So let's think about this fact first. What is the color of water? Some people may say blue, but blue is not an answer because blue is entirely from the reflection of the light. In fact, water, we cannot define any color because it is a clear solution. It has many ions in it, positive ion, negative ion. It has water as an organic, I'm sorry, not organic, as a molecular compound. And also it has a lot of living beings where we cannot discover using our human eyes. We need microscope. And those are biological beings such as bacteria. So clarity is not a good indicator in order to determine if water is actually safe to drink or not even. Or in addition to that, if the water has a lot of nutrients, minerals in it or not. Clear water can sometimes be harmful to human and other organisms. A good example that you can put, it's a tragic event generally it's followed by, is a salmonella that is exposed from the water, poor water condition. So let's think about it. Water quality is mainly determined according to what the water is used for. Water can be used for in many different ways. One of the main part is we use it as a home environment to cook something, to use it to clean something. We are going to put that as a residential use. When we learned about fresh water last year in the last unit, Unit E, we learned about these. Also, there's a industrial use of water. And those are something that use for coolant in factory and so on, or power generator station. Also, we can use water for agriculture, to grow crop, feed water to the livestock, all of these above. Depends on how we use each of the water, whether we intend it or not, carry pollutants. It can be acid or basic, or it can be any of those chemicals that can contain and carry, let's say, heavy metals like mercury, which affect the ecosystem. So there is something called provincial and federal government guideline for water quality control. Long story short, this is a guideline that has 5 to 6 different categories, but 5 categories as a main part that we are going to use. It undergo testing for water quality so that whether it can be used for residential, industrial, agricultural, and so on. One of the category is human drinking water. Can animal, especially in this case us, drink water? Also, another category for water use is recreational, such as swimming or such as the spray park, livestock drinking water, like I mentioned in agriculture, irrigation. If you don't remember irrigation, it's better to look at the image in the Google. It's used for agriculture and protection of aquatic life. The guidelines are designed to protect human, animal, crops, and other organisms that live in or near water system. So one of the WHMIS symbol that you may recall learning, it has a dead fish and dead tree near the pond. That's an icon and symbol with the red diamond as an outline, though that symbol is the one that indicate about the water, aquatic water environment damage symbol, any chemical that caused that. As soon as you see this picture, you may notice a little similarity. When we learn about acid and base, and when we especially learn about the concept of pH, we learn an indicator that can change up the color. For example, one of them is called litmus paper, the one that have color change from red to blue if it's base, blue to red if it's an acid. So in this situation, you need to know that Waterworks pH check, it show more than red and blue color because it is important to locate pH that is starting from 1 all the way to 14 and 7 in between, which should indicate using a variety of the color so that it's easy for us to use. For instance, it can be, how can I say, rainbow color. Red all the way to violet. Red should be the strongest acid. Somewhere in the middle, green for the neutral, and violet or indigo color blue should be strong base. So scientists and technicians make sure using those tools to check with the guidelines whether the water quality missed the guidelines or whatever the level, safety level that those guidelines indicate, and how we can use it to monitor the water quality. There are two methods that we can use. One is biological way, which we're going to focus the most, and there is a chemical indicator. Chemical indicator is what I just mentioned, like acid-base property of the water or solution. Now let's look at biological indicator. Biological indicator means living matter. So I want you to think about how living matter can be used to check the water quality. So let's look into this. Biological indicators are living matters. So scientists use living organisms in water to determine the water quality. And I want you to look at the scale, 0 all the way to, it's written on, oh no, sorry, it's not written on in here, but as a number scale. However, you can still read from good water quality, fair water quality, poor water quality. As you can see, there are few living matters that have to build their habitat inside of that water or aquatic environment, whatever pond or lake or river it can be. And if you find a certain population of that species, you can determine that this is a good or fair, poor quality of water. For instance, leeches. If you see no other than black fly lava leeches, that indicates poor water quality. On the other hand, if you start to see dragonfly nymph, then that's a way of, okay, this is more fair water quality. And let's say if you have a mayfly, stoneflies, then you can say this has the least of the human impact. Least human impact. And you can conclude that this water quality is very good. So what are we looking for? We look for fish. Fish is not the best indicator, however, because when you think about the food chain, they're generally on the top of the predator. You don't see a lot of numbers. So hard to do. Population statistic. Plant, worms, we actually look at a lot of worms because worms are decomposers, if you remember. Insects, plankton. And when it comes to plankton, there are plant-based one, and there's zooplankton. Protozoa, which is one of the simple-celled organism. Bacteria, and in certain cases, some of the viruses. I like to point that insects, worms, and bacteria Those three are one of the most important biological indicators, even though it's not showing in here. Some of those amphibian play a huge role too, aka frogs. As I mentioned, and as you can see from previous example, the ones that we emphasized biological indicators among those lists are microscopic, which means we cannot observe them using our eyes. They are either single cell organism or they're just slightly bigger, like biggest creatures can be millimeter to certain centimeters. So microscopic organisms such as bacteria can cause serious health problem if they are not highlighted from the analysis, because some of those bacteria can cause a disease, as you can see. And some of those that I mentioned was Salmonella as an example, or E. coli. These guys are the one that is transferable from water. So if you look at resources, know the fact that when we have a lot of nutrients that is based on carbon, nitrogen, base nutrients, if it's have abundance amount, then we generally have more population. Population goes up. If we have less of it, then we will see less. That means we have less diversity inside of the water sample. Sometimes group of scientists needs to take multiple sample of different location of the lake, river, wherever the water source that you can think of, and undergo this statistic analysis, because it's impossible for us to look at the whole area of the water body. So we need to rely on small sampling and identify using population dynamic to undergo whether it is highly diverse or low diverse. An environmental condition can get extremely dangerous when we have more of a population of bacteria. So microbiological indicators, you need to understand that, as I mentioned, we take many samples or random spots. Like the word suggests, we call it random sampling. To identify their presence to avoid contamination of the water supply. If the count of this organism is, let's say, too high, so you took some sample and then you have a lot of population going on. That means, naturally, you need to understand that high population, you may have high amount of diversity. That means high possibility of having bad bacteria that may affect our body. So that means immediate treatment is recommended. As I highlighted in the previous few slides ago, I highlighted insects also, because insect is one of the most diverse animals group, if you will, and those guys are populating really fast if the condition is ideal, and die off really fast also if the condition changes. So species of aquatic organism, in this case insects who doesn't have a spinal fluid, we call it invertebrates, and those are, like I said, no backbone exists. They may shielded by exoskeleton instead of having skeletal body, and they may indicate unsafe water. Depends on the level of it, and we will look at the level in the next slide. As you can see, the pollution level, if it's the least involved with the human activity, if you will, you start to see more of invertebrates. What I mean by that is you have a lot of diversity of stoneflies, dragonfly, mayfly, or those kind of species thriving in an environment. As you go to a highly polluted environment, especially if you look at this high situation, you see more simpler species that normally live up as a parasite or live up as decomposer, like parasite more though, like ringworm. So organisms living in a stagnant ponds are different from those living in a pond with a high concentration of dissolved oxygen. Um, we will look around the other factor like water temperature and pH level as time goes. But at this point, know the fact that biological indicator shows a general guideline. And aquatic invertebrates are the perfect ones to undergo that analysis. One of the chemical tests. Now we are getting into a little bit of chemical test is pH level. I don't want to spend a lot of time about pH level. However, it has to do with dissolved oxygen that present, and it's more tricky than what other people think. I'll elaborate a little bit. For example, if the temperature of the water goes up, this is very significant, so please write down somewhere. If the temperature of water goes up, that means we will have a lot of nasty algae will grow. We call it algal bloom. If the algae goes up, the thing is oxygen level goes down. If the oxygen level goes down, then one thing that you need to know is oxygen is required for every single animal and plant in the end. This will reduce any species they're living in. You may wonder, what will be the other contribution for algal bloom? One is a temperature change. Another one, which is regarding the pH, if the water become a bit acidic. So let's say you have a lot of acidic solution that is coming out from the factories, industrial area, or it's from let's say agricultural materials such as fertilizers that is acidic, they sip into and also cause an algal bloom. So the thing is, low pH can cause algal bloom, which reduce the oxygen. I want you to remember this relationship. pH level goes down, aka if it's more acidic, oxygen goes down. That doesn't mean base raises up. The diversity of all organisms decreases as acidic level of the water gets extreme, as I mentioned. So one thing that I will highlight here is acidity increases, oxygen decreases. And also remember, stronger acid, you need to think a little bit differently. Strong acid means lower pH. There will likely be no fish in water that has a pH below 5, which means 6 and 5 will be about weak acid, so if it gets stronger acid. Worms and midge larvae thrive in polluted water because they can thrive under that poor condition. They require only small amount of oxygen in water for survival. You can pause this video at this point so that students can write. So although there are more factors than the acid, temperature, or any type of biological indicators, complex ecosystem of the water to undergo this water quality check, one thing that I will tell you is a pond that supports a variety of organisms generally tend to have a good water quality, or it has like neutral level of a pH. However, it cannot be considered safe for humans to drink until it's tested to make sure that there's no bacteria. So for the remainder of the class, you guys have to do homework, which is textbook page 211, number 1 to 7, all the way, and number 9 and 10. Number 8 is the only one that is being omitted. This is more about the previous lessons or previous section of Unit C. And regarding this water quality, we need to learn more that involve calculation. So don't forget to bring your calculator in the next class.